Hello students, welcome back to our second lecture of chapter number 16, Chemistry in Everyday Life. In the first video lecture, students, we have studied about what are drugs, right? Classification of drugs, and also we have seen how drugs act. Now today we will see some of the various classes of drugs and their therapeutic uses. Okay, so let's start with the lecture. So today we will start with the various classes of drugs. Now students, the classes of drugs that we are going to study are, the first is antacids, the second is antihistamines, the third is neurologically active drugs, which includes further two subparts, that is tranquilizers and analgesics. Analgesics are further of two types, students: non-narcotic analgesics and narcotic analgesics. Correct? The fourth is antimicrobials, right? Antimicrobials will further be of three types, that is antibiotics, antiseptics and disinfectants. Correct? And the last category of drugs that we are going to study is anti-fertility drugs. Okay? Now, students, I will suggest you to pause the video here and write all these categories first. So when I am teaching you the topic, you can understand that what I am teaching or which subpart of the particular class of drug I am teaching. So just pause the video and note all these things first. Okay students, the first category of drugs that we are going to start with are called antacids, right? As the name suggests, antacids means against acids. What does it mean? Against acids, right? Now students, these are the drugs mainly which will help you to overcome the acidity problems in your stomach. Okay, sometimes what happens is we eat something very spicy and very fried things and all and such things, right? So because of eating of such masale wala and spicy and fried foods, there is hyper secretion of acid in the stomach, right? This hyper secretion of acid in the stomach will lead to pain and irritation. Okay, and if the situation is chronic, I mean if this situation is for very long time, then what happens? It may lead to ulcers. Okay, and even if the ulcers are not treated well, then you have to remove that particular part of the stomach which is affected. So what to do? Students, in older days or in earlier days, sodium bicarbonate, NaHCO3, which is also known as your baking soda. Okay? In the earlier days, sodium bicarbonate or baking soda was used as an antacid because it is basic in nature. What sodium bicarbonate does is, it enters the stomach, it will neutralize the excess acid which is present in the stomach. Okay, so it's good, but then sodium bicarbonate creates certain problems. What problems it creates? So what happens is, say students, it should neutralize the excess acid which is present in the stomach and bring the pH of stomach back to normal. Correct? That is what it should do. But what it does, it overdoes its job. What sodium bicarbonate does, it will make the pH of your stomach alkaline. We know that stomach will always have an acidic pH. Okay, so if the pH goes below its normal range or above its normal range, both the things are not good for us, right? If it goes below the normal range, it leads to acidity, correct? But what the sodium bicarbonate does, it will not bring the pH back to its normal, rather it will raise the pH of stomach than the normal pH. Now once it raises the pH of stomach beyond the normal pH, so what will happen, our body has, you know, that mechanism of defending ourselves against anything wrong that is going on in the body. So what body will do? Body will think that the pH of stomach is becoming alkaline. So as a result, what will happen? It will start producing more and more acid. So in long run, if you see students, the use of sodium bicarbonate as an antacid will worsen the problem. Okay, so nowadays it is no longer used. This is about, I'm talking about the olden days when it was used. Then students, to nowadays we use a mixture of aluminium hydroxide ALOH thrice and magnesium hydroxide MgOH twice, correct? Nowadays we use the mixture of aluminium hydroxide and magnesium hydroxide for treating such acidity problems, because what happens is these metal hydroxides, right, they are insoluble in the stomach, and as a result what will happen, they will not produce side effects, okay, just as sodium bicarbonate is producing. Being insoluble, they will not produce side effects. But students, you need to understand here that whether you use sodium bicarbonate or you use a mixture of aluminium hydroxide and magnesium hydroxide, the problem is that all these compounds, they will only work on the symptoms of the disease, right? But they will not cure the underlying cause of the disease. What I mean to say is that they will just neutralize the excess acid which is present in the stomach, but they will not be able to stop the production of that acid. Are you understanding? Because see, there has to be some pathological cause because of which the stomach is producing excess acid. So it will not be able to work on that particular cause that stomach is producing excess acid. But what it will do, it will just neutralize the excess acid which is present in the stomach. Okay. So these can only be used to relieve symptoms, but not to cure the disease. So later on, students, it was discovered that there is a substance called histamine in the body. This histamine leads to the release of HCl and pepsin, right? This histamine leads to the release of HCl and pepsin in the stomach. HCl is the acid which is present in the stomach, and pepsin is the protein digester enzyme which is present in the stomach. So this is released in response to histamine. We restrict or we inhibit the binding of histamine to its receptor. Then what will happen? Release of HCl and pepsin will be stopped, and thus will get relief from acidity. Okay. So what I am saying is, if I block histamine, then what will happen? This thing will also be blocked. Okay. Students, for blocking or inhibiting, I will always use this particular sign. Okay. Now students, the drugs which block histamine are cimetidine, right? Cimetidine is available in the market in the name of Tagamet. And the second drug, right, that is ranitidine. It is available by the name of Zentec in the market. Okay. So drugs like cimetidine and ranitidine will block the histamine, right? And as a result, what will happen? This histamine will not be able to cause the release of HCl and pepsin. Okay. One thing, students, just for your knowledge, for your information, though it is not given in your textbook. See students, here what happens? Your histamine actually joins with the H2 receptors. Okay. So there can be more than one type of the receptor on which your chemical messenger joins or binds. So here, when histamine binds with the H2 receptors, it causes the release of HCl and pepsin. So these drugs, what they do, they will act as an antagonist for H2 receptors. I mean, they will just go and bind with the H2 receptors. So histamine will not be able to bind with the H2 receptor, and hence HCl and pepsin release will be stopped. Okay. Now students, let us start with the second class of drugs, that is antihistamines. Now as you know, histamine, which is a chemical messenger in our body, this histamine produces certain effects in the body. Okay, let us see. The first effect that it produces is vasodilation. What is vasodilation? See, this is your blood vessel, right? Now what histamine will do? This histamine will cause your blood vessel to dilate. See, like this. It will cause the dilation, okay, the broadening of the blood vessels. So that is one function of histamine. The second function of histamine is contraction of muscles of bronchi and gut. Okay, gut means your abdominal part, your stomach. Then it causes nasal congestion. Fourth is, it is involved in the allergic reactions to pollen grains, right? Students, basically histamine in your body is released by the cells when there is some sort of allergic reactions taking place in your body. Okay, just think what happens in allergic reactions. There is reddening of the skin. That reddening of the skin is because of vasodilation. It will cause vasodilation, so more and more blood can rush to that particular part, so that causes the reddening of the skin. Then contraction of muscles of bronchi and gut. The asthma patients, they will feel a sort of congestion or contraction in their bronchi or chest cavity. That is because of histamine. Nasal congestion. When you suffer from this common cold and all those things, so your nose feels choked up. Okay, that nasal congestion is also caused by histamine, and it is responsible for various allergic reactions in your body. Okay, now in this case, students, again, if I block the effect of histamine, then I can prevent all these effects, right? So the drugs that block the effect of histamine here are brompheniramine, which is sold by the name of Dimetapp, and terfenadine, which is sold by the name of Seldane. Okay, so these drug, students, will inhibit or will block histamine, because of which you can overcome all those allergic effects. Now, one very important thing which I would like to mention here is, see students, histamine produces all these effects by acting on a receptor called H1 receptor. Correct? As I told you earlier, that the antihistaminic drugs which are used for treating acidity, in that case the histamine will go and bind with the H2 receptors. But here, for allergy, for production of symptoms of allergy, histamine has to bind with H1 receptors. So say students, both the receptors are different. Correct? So these drugs cannot be used for curing acidity, and those antacid drugs that we learned earlier cannot be used for curing allergy. So this should be very clear to you, because both the effects, right, whether it is antacid effect or it is allergy effect, both the effects histamine exhibits by the help of different type of the receptors. Okay, students, let us start with the third class of drugs, that is neurologically active drugs. Correct? Now students, these drugs, these neurologically active drugs, right, they can be of two types. They may be tranquilizers, or they may be analgesics. And these analgesics can again be of two types, that is non-narcotic analgesics and narcotic analgesics. Correct? Let us understand one by one what this means. First of all, we'll understand what neurologically active drugs means. See students, neurologically active. The name itself suggests that neurologically active drugs are the drugs, which will act on your nerves. Neurologically active drugs act on nerves. Now, neurologically active drugs, the first class of drugs that we have is tranquilizers. So let us begin with tranquilizers. Tranquilizers, right? As you know, if you see dictionary, you can find the meaning of the word tranquil. Tranquil, which means cool and calm. Okay, so these drugs are used to relieve stress, anxiety, and treat mild to severe mental disease. Okay, so students, these are the drugs that that will relieve your stress. Okay, we know that in today's modern world we have a lot of stress. Teachers, they have the stress of working hard after students and producing the best result and making the students the best possible human being a teacher can make, right? And students, they have the stress of studying, getting good marks in exam, their admissions, but I am not talking about all this stress. This stress means it is something of a next level. Okay, because of the stress, if your health is deteriorating, then we can consider this. Anxiety, right? Bechani hona, that is anxiety. Treat severe and treat mild to severe mental disease. Or suppose if someone is suffering from the mental disease, maybe mild mental disease or a very severe mental disease. So in all these categories, tranquilizers will be used. What they do? Tranquilizers make you cool and calm, right? Tranquilizers, they make you cool and calm. Okay, you become relaxed after taking tranquilizers, right? Now they are the components of sleeping pills. Okay, there are many people who suffer from sleep disorders. They don't, they don't fall asleep very easily. So for those people who are suffering from such sleep disorders, tranquilizers can be used, and they are given in the form of sleeping pills. Okay. Now my question is, sir, what causes anxiety or what causes depression? What is the cause of depression? If we understand the cause of depression, we will understand how these drugs act. So, see students, in our body we have a hormone, right, or a neurotransmitter which is known as noradrenaline. It is a hormone as well as a neurotransmitter, both. So we have a neurotransmitter as well as a hormone. Together I can call it a neurohormone, right? Noradrenaline. What this noradrenaline does? This noradrenaline is responsible for your mood swings. Noradrenaline is responsible for mood swings. Correct? If noradrenaline is high, then you will feel high spirited. You will feel very energetic, and you will feel very fresh, energetic, and you will want to do some work. But if the adrenaline level goes down, then what will happen? Then it leads to your mood off, or say for example it leads to depression. Okay, so what happens is there are some enzymes. Okay, there will be some enzymes. What they will do? They will act on noradrenaline and will cause degradation of noradrenaline. Right? Some enzymes will act on noradrenaline and cause its degradation. Okay, so if we provide certain drugs, they inhibit the enzymes responsible for degradation of noradrenaline, right? If certain drugs, if they inhibit the enzymes responsible for degradation of noradrenaline, then what will happen? The level of noradrenaline in your blood will rise, and as a result, again you will feel cool, calm, high spirited and relaxed. Okay, now this is how your tranquilizers work. correct? This is how your tranquilizers work. What tranquilizers do basically, they will inhibit the enzymes which are responsible for the degradation of noradrenaline, and finally what they do is that they will take you out of the depression mood and all those things. Okay, now see students, here I will be listing down the example of certain tranquilizers. Phenelzine is one tranquilizer. The second is iproniazid. Right? The second is iproniazid. Third is meprobamate. The fourth is chlordiazepoxide. इसको अगर आप थोड़ा सा सेपरेटली पढ़ोगे तो chlordiazepoxide, राइट? देखो संधि ज्वाइन करनी है, chlordiazepoxide. Now how all these names comes? Students, these all names comes from the structure of these drugs. Okay. Then fifth is Equanil. Equanil तो बच्चों बहुत ही काम की ड्रग है. Equanil can be used in two ways. It is used to treat hypertension and also depression. Right? एक तो डिप्रेशन को ट्रीट करता है, इसलिए it is in the category of tranquilizers. And second is it will also treat hypertension. What is hypertension? High blood pressure. ठीक है? It will treat high blood pressure also. So these are the 5 different examples of tranquilizers that I have given to you. Okay. Besides this, students, there are certain derivatives of barbituric acid. There are derivatives of barbituric acid. Okay, and these derivatives of barbituric acid are known as barbiturates. Correct? These derivatives of barbituric acid are known as barbiturates. These barbiturates, they are used in sleeping pills because they are hypnotic. Right? Students, hypnotic is any substance that will induce sleep. ठीक है? Hypnotic is any substance that will induce sleep. Okay, so ये sleeping pills are all hypnotics. Okay, so the derivatives of barbituric acid, also known as barbiturates, they act as hypnotics and are used in sleeping pills. Now example of such barbiturates are Veronal, Seconal, Luminal, Nembutal and Amital. Okay, students, these are the examples of various barbiturates: Veronal, Seconal, Luminal, Nembutal and Amital. These are the various examples of barbiturates. Okay, besides this, 2 other names are also given: Valium and serotonin. These are also used as your tranquilizers. Now students, let us come to the next category of neurologically active drugs, that is analgesics. Right? See students, analgesics is, in very simple words if I tell you, analgesics are painkillers. ठीक है? They help to relieve pain. Like headache हो रहा है, you take a medicine. मुझे यहाँ दुख रहा है, you take a medicine. Okay, so for killing some pain or abolishing the pain from your body, analgesics are used. Now students, see, analgesics can be of 2 types. The first is non-narcotic analgesics. See, non-narcotic analgesics जो होते हैं, they relieve pain without causing sleep. Okay, so these non-narcotic analgesics will relieve your pain, but they will not cause any sleep. They are non-addictive, मतलब they are not habit forming. ओके, आपको इसकी आदत नहीं पड़ेगी कभी भी. दे आर नॉन एडिक्टिव. कभी भी आपको इसकी आदत नहीं पड़ेगी, ठीक है, नॉन नार्कोटिक एनाल्जेसिक्स की। नाउ these drugs, the example of non-narcotic analgesics include aspirin and paracetamol. Students, let us have the look at the structure of aspirin. See, this is salicylic acid. If I acetylate it here, if I put an acetyl group here, then it becomes aspirin. This is the structure of aspirin. Let us have a look at the structure of paracetamol. Therefore, students, from the name itself I can make out para. So there has to be groups on para, right? All here is taken from phenol. So I'll put OH, right? M is taken from amine, right? Now acid. So here if you remove one hydrogen and if you put acetyl group, it becomes paracetamol. ठीक है, para, acid, acetyl group, M, amino group, all, phenol. ठीक है, paracetamol. So this is the structure of aspirin and this is the structure of paracetamol. Okay. Now students, both aspirin and paracetamol are non-narcotic analgesics. Now let us see how this drug acts. So what happens? There are certain chemicals in the body called prostaglandins. Prostaglandins. These chemicals, they cause pain. These chemicals, they cause pain in the body. Now, if I have a drug which will block these prostaglandins, right? Then what will happen? If the production of prostaglandins is stopped, then the pain in the body will also be abolished. Clear? So non-narcotic analgesics exactly do this. They block your prostaglandins and hence the pain in the body is abolished. Okay. Now besides this, students, see, aspirin will have so many other uses also, right? It is a non-narcotic analgesic, but besides this, see, it acts as antipyretic. मुझे बताओ बच्चों क्या हो सकता है एंटीपायरेटिक? एंटी अगेंस्ट पायरो, temperature, rise in temperature, right? So antipyretic. So it can be used in fever, okay, to bring down the body temperature. Generally in fever, your body temperature goes up. To bring the temperature down, we can use antipyretic drugs. Aspirin also acts as an antipyretic. Okay, so generally given in cases of fever also. It is also used to relieve arthritic pain. It is also used to relieve arthritic pain. Arthritis में students क्या होता है? इसी ये जो joints होते हैं, right? Your joints, particularly of hand and legs, the joints they get deformed, and because of this, the arthritic patient suffers from a lot of pain. So to overcome that pain or to abolish that pain, aspirin is given. Then aspirin also has anti-platelet, or you can say anti-blood clotting activity. ठीक है? Your aspirin, it blocks or inhibits platelets. Platelets, as you all know, are our blood cells that cause the clotting of blood. Aspirin, what it does, it will block the platelets and hence blood clotting will not occur. Correct? Hence blood clotting will not occur. So basically, it is very helpful to the patients in the case of heart disorders. Okay, if this can be useful for the patient having heart disorders. Now students, let us have a look at narcotic analgesics. Okay, the next class of analgesics, that is narcotic analgesics. These narcotic analgesic students, they relieve pain by causing sleep. ठीक है? These drugs, students, what they do is they will relieve pain and also they will induce sleep. The person taking these drugs, he will feel asleep. पेन तो जाएगी बट ही विल फील asleep. They are addictive or habit forming. Okay, they are addictive. मतलब if you it's okay if you take it as a drug, but people what they do, they misuse it for the euphoric effects. आपने मूवीज में देखा होगा, ठीक है, a person is taking an injection and then he's feeling that everything is pink around him or her. So that for those effects, if you use it, then you are abusing the drug. And my dear students, mind well that in high doses or in the dose in which you abuse the drug, in high doses it can cause stupor, coma, convulsions and even death. Right? Stupor is loss of unconsciousness or loss of your senses. Coma, you know. Convulsions मतलब it is like fits आना, ठीक है, जब fits आते हैं, that is convulsion, seizures. And finally it may also cause death. So generally students, you know, one should not even try these drugs even for pleasure or even for, you know, let's try it once, because you will not even know that when you become addicted to these drugs, they are very, very dangerous. They can only be given by doctors. Okay, and for they also cannot be used, you know, for normal pain. Like मुझे headache हो रहा है तो let me take this drug. No. For such pains also it is not used. It is used for very, very severe pains. Like it can be used in pains of cardiac problems, right? कभी जैसे ना if there is some cardiac problem या there is a pain of heart, right? अगर हार्ट में पेन हो रहा है तो you know that pain is very, very severe. So in that cases such drugs can be given. Then post-operative pain, कुछ ऑपरेशन करवाया है, you know, and when the person he is becoming conscious, so after operation what will happen, he may experience a lot of pain. So for treating of such pains, such narcotic analgesics may be given. Then it can be given for during after childbirth, the pain of childbirth, ठीक है, उसके लिए narcotic analgesics can be given. Okay, and sometimes in terminal cases of cancer. सी स्टूडेंट्स, जो कैंसर पेशेंट्स होते हैं ना, राइट, उनका जो टर्मिनल केसेस मतलब उनका जो लास्ट स्टेज का कैंसर होता है, उसमें व्हाट हैपेंस इज समटाइम्स यू नो द पेन इज सो अनबेरेबल दैट पेशेंट कैन नॉट टॉलरेट इट. बहुत ज्यादा अनबेरेबल पेन होती है. सो टू ट्रीट दैट थिंग समटाइम्स दिस नार्कोटिक एनाल्जेसिक्स आर गिवन. ओके, लेकिन उससे होता कुछ नहीं, पेन तो जाती है लेकिन पर्सन ही विल बी स्लीपिंग ओनली. ओके, सो दीज आर द सम ऑफ द यूजेस ऑफ नार्कोटिक एनाल्जेसिक्स. Let us now have a look at some examples of narcotic analgesics. Okay, so students, the examples of narcotic analgesics includes morphine and its derivatives. The examples of narcotic analgesics include morphine and its derivatives. Okay, that is heroin, codeine. Okay, these all these things, they are known as opiates. All these things, students, are known as opiates because they are obtained from opium poppy. Okay, they are obtained from opium poppy. Actually, there is a fruit. Okay, from that fruit this morphine is obtained, but that is entirely a separate topic, how morphine is obtained. Let us not enter into, you know, all such details because not relevant to your textbook. So all these are obtained from opium poppy and hence they are known as opiates. Okay, many times in exams, students, it is asked, give two differences between non-narcotic analgesics and narcotic analgesics. See, the first 2 points are the differences between narcotic and non-narcotic analgesics. Okay, you can also think of some more differences. Okay, let us start with the 4 category of drug, that is antimicrobials. Okay. Now students, there may be various pathogens in the body that cause disease. What is a pathogen? Pathogen is a disease causing organism. Now, your pathogen can be bacteria, okay, it can be fungus, it can be virus, or it can be some other parasite. Okay, so drugs which act against bacteria are known as antibacterials. Drugs which act against fungus are known as antifungal. Drug acting against viruses are known as antiviral drugs. Right? And drugs which act against parasite are known as anti-parasite drugs. Clear? Now, antimicrobial we will be studying in antimicrobial can be further classified into three different categories. They are antibiotics, they may be antiseptics, and they may be disinfectants. Okay? Now, antibiotics. Let us start with the first subcategory, that is antibiotics. Now students, antibiotics actually, they were discovered from a particular microorganism, and they used to kill the microorganism or at least inhibit its growth. So in the earlier days, it was antibiotics, they were discovered from microorganism and were used to kill or inhibit growth of other microorganism. ठीक है, तो स्टूडेंट्स होता क्या था कि एंटीबायोटिक ड्रग्स वर डिस्कवर्ड फ्रॉम पर्टिकुलर माइक्रोऑर्गेनिज्म एंड दिस drugs were used to kill some other microorganisms. You all know about penicillin, right? So penicillin was discovered from a fungus and it kills or inhibits the growth of bacteria. It's an antibacterial drug basically, okay, but obtained from fungus. Then what they used to do, this antibiotic was obtained from a particular microorganism, right? Now they used to chemically modify its structure. What could be the cause of chemically modifying the structure? See, by chemically modifying the structure, scientists, they used to increase the effectiveness of the drug, thereby reducing its side effect. Okay, so later on, the definition of antibiotic was modified and it was given as a substance which is produced wholly or partially by chemical synthesis and which kills or inhibits the growth of microorganisms by intervening with their metabolic processes. Okay? So students, see, the modern definition of antibiotic goes like this. It is a substance which is produced fully, wholly or partially by chemical synthesis. Okay? So either you can produce it artificially by chemical synthesis or you can obtain it from a particular source and then you can do chemical modification on it. Okay? And which kills, either it kills the microorganisms, and some antibiotics may not actually kill the microorganism, but what they will do, they will just inhibit the growth of microorganisms. So what will happen? Okay, the number of microorganisms will not rise, right? kills or inhibit the growth of microorganisms. How? By intervening, by interfering with their metabolic processes. So these drugs, they interfere with the metabolic processes of microorganisms, and hence either they kill them or they inhibit their growth. Okay, clear? Let us now, students, begin with the history of antibiotics. Okay, so first of all, there was a German bacteriologist called Paul Ehrlich. Paul Ehrlich. He first of all prepared a drug called arsphenamine. Paul Ehrlich first of all prepared a drug called arsphenamine, or you can also call it salvarsan. Okay, and this drug was effective against bacteria, a particular class of bacteria called spirochetes that cause syphilis. Syphilis, students, is a sexually transmitted disease, or in short STD. So a particular type of bacteria called spirochetes, they cause syphilis, and salvarsan or arsphenamine is the drug which is effective against syphilis. Now this drug is more toxic to bacteria as compared to animals or human beings. But yes, it do have some level of toxicity for human beings too. Okay, so you cannot say it is completely safe to be used in human beings. Now, this person, Paul Ehrlich, when he looked at the structure of arsphenamine, he found such a linkage in arsphenamine. Okay, at the same time, Paul Ehrlich was also working with azodice. So he found this type of the linkage in azodice. See, so almost the linkage is same. Only the difference that here there are arsenic atoms and here there are nitrogen atoms. Okay, so now what he did, he prepared certain azodice and he tested these azodice on the bacteria, and he found that he could stain some of the parts of bacteria by using azodice. Okay, so by doing this research, he came to a compound called prontosil. Prontosil, right? He discovered a drug called prontosil. This drug was much effective against bacteria, but it was not very toxic to human beings. Okay, and later on researching, it was found that prontosil is so effective against bacteria because in the body it converts to a substance called sulfanilamide. Right, the prontosil, when taken, it enters the body and converts into sulfanilamide. Sulfanilamide comes under the category of sulfur drugs. Sulfur drugs, students, are again a very wide category of compounds. Sulfanilamide is one of the drug of sulfur drugs. Okay, now the most important sulfur drug, I think you might have heard, is sulfapyridine. This is most widely used sulfur drug, sulfapyridine. Now the sulfur drugs came into existence. Okay, then what happened? Two scientists, Alexander Fleming, I am very sure all of you have heard these names, Alexander Fleming and H.W. Florey. Okay, Alexander Fleming and H.W. Florey, what they did was they discovered another antibiotic. They discovered another antibiotic called penicillin, right, from the fungus Penicillium fungus, right? They discovered a drug called penicillin from Penicillium fungus. Okay, but penicillin also, I mean, it has lot of problems. Okay, then later on, its synthetic derivatives ampicillin and amoxicillin were produced. Okay, so that is all about how discovery of these antibiotics were made. Now see, students, your antibiotics can be classified in two categories depending upon whether they kill the microorganism or they inhibit the growth of microorganism, right? So whether they kill the microorganism or they inhibit the growth of microorganism. If they kill the microorganism, then we will put a suffix "cidal." Okay, and if they will inhibit the growth of microorganism, then I will put the suffix "static." Okay, so suppose if a particular antibiotic is killing the bacteria, I will call it bactericidal. If it inhibits the growth of bacteria, I will call it bacteriostatic. Correct? Now, the examples of bactericidal or the drugs which kills the microorganisms include penicillin, aminoglycosides, and ofloxacin. Okay, and the drugs which will inhibit the growth of microorganisms include your erythromycin, tetracycline, and chloramphenicol. Okay, now students, there is one more method by which you can classify antibiotics. Okay, antibiotics can also be classified depending upon what range of microbes it can kill, right? What range of microbes it is effective against. Okay, so based on that, we have narrow spectrum antibiotic. Based on that, we have broad spectrum antibiotic, narrow spectrum antibiotic, and limited spectrum antibiotic. Correct? Now, narrow spectrum or broad spectrum antibiotics. Broad spectrum antibiotics are the antibiotics that are effective against both gram positive and gram negative bacteria. Okay, they are effective against both gram positive and gram negative bacteria. Okay, means it will act both on the gram positive bacteria also and gram negative bacteria also. It will not distinguish between them. Students जिनको नहीं मालूम है, gram positive and gram negative bacteria are the types of bacteria which mainly differ in the structure of cell wall that they have. Okay. Now narrow spectrum antibiotics are effective against either gram positive or gram negative bacteria, right? Narrow spectrum antibiotics will act either on gram positive or on gram negative. It means if they are acting on gram positive, they will not act on gram negative, and if they are acting on gram negative, they will not act on gram positive. And limited spectrum antibiotics are the antibiotics that are effective only against a single parasite or disease. So such antibiotics, they are effective only against one single parasite or only one disease, right? So it means it has very limited use, very limited utility. Hence they are known as limited spectrum antibiotic. Okay. Now students, your penicillin G. Penicillin G comes under narrow spectrum antibiotics. Okay, penicillin G comes under narrow spectrum antibiotic. Now, the chemical modifications of this penicillin are ampicillin and amoxicillin. They are nothing but chemically modified forms of penicillin G. they come under broad spectrum antibiotics. Okay, it means they are effective against both gram positive as well as gram negative bacteria. Correct? Besides this, students, we have one more drug called chloramphenicol. Okay, chloramphenicol is also your broad spectrum antibiotic. It can be given in typhoid fever. Then it can also be given in treatment of dysentery. Then acute fever. Acute मतलब short term. ठीक है, बहुत लंबे समय से फीवर नहीं है, but it's a short term fever. So for that we use the word acute, and chronic means long term. Okay, acute fever. Then treating certain urinary infections. Then meningitis. Students, meningitis is the inflammation of meninges. Meninges are the layers which are present surrounding your brain. They are basically protective in nature. Okay, so if there is inflammation of the meninges, that condition is known as meningitis, and in that case chloramphenicol is given. And also it can be used in treatment of pneumonia. Okay, so see, because it is a broad spectrum antibiotic, see students, it will have a variety of uses, a large number of uses. Okay, then vancomycin and ofloxacin are also effective against gram positive and gram negative bacteria, and hence they can also be used as broad spectrum antibiotics. Clear? Students, whenever you are using penicillin, okay, or any synthetic derivative of penicillin, I mean penicillin G, ampicillin, amoxicillin, right? Always the sensitivity test always has to be done first. Okay, they will give you a small amount of penicillin, or you know, they rub small amount of penicillin on the skin. Students, whenever you are using penicillin or any synthetic form of penicillin, that is ampicillin, amoxicillin, a sensitivity test has to be done, because many people are allergic or hypersensitive to penicillin and its derivatives. So doctors first of all perform the sensitivity test, and you know, if it suits you, then only they will give you penicillin. Okay, now there is a drug called dicid-azirin, right, which will help you to treat cancer. It will act against the cancerous cells. Okay, so this is the different ways in which your antibiotics can be classified. Okay, let us now start with the second subcategory of antimicrobials, that is antiseptics. So students, antiseptics are the drugs that kill or inhibit the growth of microorganisms on living surfaces. Okay, so these antiseptics are to be applied on living surfaces. Okay, so basically living surfaces, by living surfaces I mean you can apply it on skin, you can apply it on wounds, cuts, okay, etc. So on living surfaces it has to be applied. Okay, now the examples, various examples of your antiseptics include: number one, furacin, right? The second is, this again I am very sure all of you might have used it, soframycin. The third example is Dettol. Okay, students, because since we are talking about Dettol, let me tell you, whenever you have to use Dettol on your skin, okay, make sure you take Dettol, dilute it with water, and you know, then only you use it, because Dettol will only be effective when you dilute it with some water. Then it will be effective. Actually it turns into an emulsion when you dilute it with water. Okay, and this emulsion will be effective on the living surfaces. Correct? So Dettol is nothing but a mixture of chloroxylenol and terpenol. Go through this, students, very nicely. This was asked in JEE mains. Okay, go through it very nicely. Then the fourth example is, I can give you the example of iodine tincture. Iodine tincture. वो क्या होता है? It is 2 to 3% solution of iodine in alcohol water mixture. ठीक है? So what they do? They take the mixture of alcohol and water, and in that they add iodine and they prepare 2 to 3% solution of iodine in alcohol water mixture. That is known as tincture iodine. These students you might have seen, suppose when you go to doctor and you have some wound or something, so doctor takes that dark brown colored solution on the cotton and he rubs it on your skin, okay, on the wound, around the wound. That is nothing but tincture iodine solution. Okay. The next example is povidone iodine. Povidone iodine, here your iodine is present in the form of a complex compound. The basic difference is tincture iodine, it stains, okay, and also it will cause that irritation when it is applied on the skin. Povidone iodine will not stain you. Okay, so that is an example of povidone iodine. Then students, iodoform, CHI3. Iodoform is also used as an antiseptic. Okay, one more example, biothionol, or in some books it is also written as biothional. It is used in making soaps. Okay, biothionol is used as an antiseptic compound in soaps. Okay, then dilute solution of boric acid is used as antiseptic for eyes. Correct? The dilute solution of boric acid, students, is used as an antiseptic for your eyes. Okay, so these are some of the examples which are given in the textbook. The third category of drugs that we are going to study under antimicrobials are disinfectants. Okay, see students, disinfectant will kill or inhibit the growth of microorganisms on inanimate or non-living objects. ठीक है? So disinfectants will kill or inhibit the growth of microorganisms on non-living objects. So the basic difference between antiseptics and disinfectants is that antiseptics are only used on living surfaces and disinfectants can be used on non-living things. Okay. Now see students, certain substance which acts as antiseptic in lower concentration may act as disinfectant in higher concentration. I will explain you this by giving an example. See, 0.2% phenol solution. 0.2% phenol solution acts as an antiseptic, but 1% phenol solution will act as disinfectant. Correct? So in less concentration of 0.2%, your phenol solution will act as antiseptic, but in high concentration of 1%, the same phenol solution will act as an disinfectant. Okay? Then 0.2 to 0.4 ppm aqueous chlorine solution. Okay? So aqueous chlorine solution in the concentration of 0.2 to 0.4 ppm, that is parts per million, can be used as a disinfectant. Okay, this you might have seen, right, in your water parks and swimming pools. Okay, the next is very low concentration of sulfur dioxide. Okay, so very low concentration of sulfur dioxide is also used as your disinfectant. Okay, so these are some of the examples given in textbook for antiseptics and disinfectants. But students, remember the difference very nicely, that antiseptics are only used for living surfaces, for for killing or inhibiting the growth of microorganisms on living surfaces, whereas disinfectants are used on your non-living surfaces. Okay, students, the last category of drugs that I am going to teach you is anti-fertility drugs. Now, because of this invention of antibiotics and such other drugs, the lifespan of a person has increased. Okay, not only that, but there is also population explosion. Okay, so there are some drugs which can be used as a childbirth measures. Okay, so that population can be controlled. Such drugs are known as anti-fertility drugs. As you know, in a female there are main two hormones, estrogen and progesterone. Right? You might be knowing that this progesterone hormone, it will suppress ovulation. It means it will not allow the ovulation to occur. Okay, so the synthetic progesterone derivative known as norethindrone. Norethindrone is a synthetic progesterone derivative and very powerful, is generally given as an anti-fertility drug. But this drug is not given alone, it is given in the combination of estrogen derivative, the synthetic estrogen derivative known as ethinyl estradiol. These two drugs are always given in combination, and this combination will work as a anti-fertility drug. Okay, or ethinyl estradiol, you can write it as norvestrol. Okay, it is sold by the name of norvestrol. Okay, so this combination of ethinyl estradiol and norethindrone, they act as anti-fertility drug. Students, many times in exams it is asked that ethinyl estradiol is a synthetic derivative of what? Okay, or which component it has in it. So it will have estrogenic component and norethindrone will have a progesteronic component. Is that very clear? Okay. Okay students, a lot of questions might be going on in your mind, that how are we going to remember so many different names of the drugs, so many different categories of the drugs. So this is the chart that I have drawn here, which will help you to remember the class of the drugs, its function and mechanism of action, as well as the examples. Okay, so this chart covers almost all the information that we have studied in the today's video's lecture. Now, one more thing. Students, if you see your NCERT textbook, there are a lot of structures of drugs given in your textbook, right? Now that might be a question, that whether you have to do those structures or you don't have to do those structures. Let me explain you. See, it's a matter of choice now. If you want to do the structures, you can do the structures. See, the structures are not very important for your board exams. I have not seen even for a single year that they have asked any structure till date in the board exams, right? So for board exams, they are not very important. You can skip. If you are looking for board exams, you can skip the structures. Okay, even in Gujket, I have not seen that they ask such structures. So for Gujket also, you can skip the structures. But when you talk about JEE and NEET, especially for JEE mains, students, I have seen so many times some or the other structure is asked in exam. The type of questions that they ask is, sometimes they give you the structure, like Dettol, right? I told you that Dettol consists of chloroxylenol and terpinol. So once it was asked, the structure of chloroxylenol and terpinol was asked once in JEE mains, right? Then अभी इस साल का अभी लास्ट February 2020 में जो आपकी JEE की एग्जाम गई, right? Sorry, in January 2020, in that exam what they did was they asked how many chiral centers are present in so and so drug. How many stereoisomers are possible for so and so drug. So students, only if you know the structure, you can find out the chiral centers, and you can then tell the number of stereoisomers present. So such questions are asked. So for board exams, you can skip the structures, is totally fine. But for JEE mains and NEET, yes, you have to do the structures. But now here there is a catch. Listen to me carefully. What I personally feel is, instead of doing so many structures for JEE mains and NEET, okay, it is better to clear your other concepts. That time can be utilized for clearing other concepts. Okay, अगर JEE में आपको केमिस्ट्री में 25 क्वेश्चंस पूछे हैं, तो स्टूडेंट्स, all the 25 questions are not meant for attempting. Keep this thing in your mind. So the time that you give for doing these structures and all, and that time you can dedicate for other things, like you can practice numericals, you can practice other reactions, you can learn other concepts. You can give that time to those things. So at least those concepts will become clear. Okay. Then structures, if you do it today, right, even if you prepare it today, see, you won't be able to remember it for long. Every time you have to revise the structures. Okay. So even after doing the structures, it is not guaranteed that you will be able to attempt the question that is asked from the structure. So now you are smart enough. So it's your call whether you want to do the structures or you want to skip the structures. Okay. So what you do right now is just take a screenshot of this chart. Just take a screenshot of this chart, and this will be helpful to you in preparing the topic. Okay. And later on you can just from this chart, the whole chart, you can copy down it in a notebook or somewhere where you can easily access it. Okay. So hope you have liked the video. Okay. Like the video, then hit the like button. Any doubts or any queries you have in this particular topic, you can comment in the comment box below. Okay. And if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, do subscribe to the channel, and you can share this with your friends or your relatives. This is very, very important and useful for 12th standard students. Okay. So study nicely. Okay. And all the best. Bye for now.